Welcome back to Learn Your Stripes. I'm Ryan Guillory.
And I'm Michael Moran, and today we're going to talk about weather interruptions, free kicks, punts, and a little bit more.
We have a couple of after further reviews this week. First, last week's problem. I erroneously wrote it to say that A87 was tackled inbounds at the A27 when it should have been the B27. The play was not designed to contemplate a 46-yard backward pass, so totally my error. The second after further review this week, we have set forth from the beginning of this podcast that we had intended for it to be about 25 minutes for each episode. We've done that 1 out of 5 times. So we no longer believe that this is a 25-minute podcast. It is finished when it's finished, and it's jam-packed with content. So hopefully it's helpful to you in having 40, 45, 50 minutes, whatever it ends up being each week. Hopefully that's more helpful than even a 20, 25-minute session.
I think with that, Ryan, what people don't know is we have about 10 to 15 minutes of content that we have to somehow pack into an hour. Somehow, or no, I said that back. Excuse me. But we do appreciate everyone coming along with us for the ride. And it's been fun doing this, and we hope every week that everyone's getting something out of it. So we'll get into this week here. We've got a brand new play. The clock is running with 43 seconds left in the second quarter, with A having 2nd and 10 at the B34. A10 completes a pass to A87, who's tackled inbounds at the B27. Following that play, A tries to quickly snap the ball. A87 and A17 run toward their spots on the wings, but never get set prior to the snap. So this is what we asked you last week. So what's the foul? What are the options, if any? What's our difference between high school and college? Looking for our down and distance, our game clock status, and our play clock status. So now at both levels, this is going to come around as a false start because the offense wasn't set for 1 second prior to the snap. It's a 5-yard penalty in both high school and in college, so we'll have 3rd and 8. Now, in high school, B can choose to have the game clock start on the snap instead of the ready. And as the penalty stops this clock in college, B also has the option of a 10-second runoff. A can avoid that runoff with a timeout if they have one remaining. And if there's a runoff, in this case, if we do have one, the clock's going to start on the ready. Otherwise, it's going to be a 25-second play clock, and that's at college and high school.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. Our first topic this week, as Michael mentioned a little while ago, is weather interruptions. A lot of crews have already dealt with weather interruptions, and we're 3 games into the season at this point.
Right.
Before the game starts, before we assume jurisdiction as officials and we enter the field, the determination as to weather conditions rests solely with game management and consultation with the visiting school's representative. Now, once we assume jurisdiction and we enter the field, the determination as to whether conditions are unsafe to continue rests with the referee. Any decision that the referee makes to suspend or resume play should be made by taking into account all available information and after consultation with representatives of both schools. The decision if and when to suspend the game to be continued at a later date or to end the game with the final score as is made by the representatives of the schools, not the officials. We only have input in this area if we're trying to determine whether it's safe to resume play at a particular time. And functionally speaking, I know both you and I, Michael, and me usually, since I'm on the home side at almost every school as line judge, there's typically, if we have weather that might be an issue, there's a trainer with a phone or some other electronic device that measures lightning. I think 8 miles is the cutoff, or one that I've heard them say if there's lightning within 8 miles. But obviously, if we see lightning, we hear thunder. That's sort of where we initiate all of this. But when we hear thunder, we see lightning, anything of the sort, we need to suspend play immediately and move everyone involved to a safe location for at least 30 minutes. The last lightning strike, that last roll of thunder, that starts the clock on 30 minutes.
Yep.
Once play has been suspended, we have to wait at least 30 minutes before we resume play. We should have a member of the crew timing this interval. Any subsequent thunder or lightning after the beginning of that 30-minute count resets that clock, and another 30-minute count begins. Recall the recent rule change that if a game is interrupted due to weather during the last 3 minutes of the second quarter and the delay lasts for at least 30 minutes, the opposing coaches can mutually agree to shorten the halftime period, provided there is at least a 1-minute intermission, as well as the subsequent 3-minute warm-up period.
Yeah, there's a lot of good material there, especially in our mechanics book. But I think the important thing to remember is we should be proactive in a lot of these situations. So what I do on our crew, Wednesdays nights, sometimes Thursday mornings, I'm sending out kind of our pregame, and part of that is not only just scattering reports of both teams or what to bring, but that's weather conditions. So I'm always looking ahead to see what's the weather going to be like on Friday. Are we sunny? Are we cloudy? Is it cold? Is it hot? Or are we going to have rain? If you're lucky enough to be in the season, you might have some snow. And that can be fun too. But we talked a little bit earlier about weather devices or phone apps or all that kind of advanced technology, which is really helpful to us. And Ryan alluded to being on the home side, he has some advantages there. That's just where you want to be in communication with the school and make sure you know who that point person is. Sometimes it's a trainer, sometimes it might be maybe the assistant athletic director, or it could be anybody. Just make sure they're in communication with you. However, though, I will say if you see lightning or hear thunder, or as I think I said a couple weeks ago, I said I heard lightning because I got a little tongue tied. But anytime you have that's going to take priority, and at that point we need to suspend the game. Now, sometimes when we get later on the season and it's dark, it's nighttime, obviously the lightning can be more visible. It looks like it can be closer than it actually is. So if you see it, stop the game, get with the game management, try to figure out how far away that storm might be, and if we can continue to play or if we need to suspend it. And then lastly there, Ryan hit on the 3 minutes. We can, if both coaches agree, we can shorten the half there and get to our unfortunate weather delay, then put our warm-up period on there and go. So a lot of stuff there, and that's stuff that we have to know, have to be prepared for to keep the players safe.
Right. And we're about to have our first ever in-podcast session after further review. A couple minutes ago, I mentioned an 8-mile distance for lightning. It's actually 10 miles according to the manual. So it's 10 miles for us to suspend play, not 8 miles. My error.
Good catch.
But if we do have a game that's interrupted by severe weather, we're responsible for recording certain information because we'll need that, whether it's us coming back for another date or another crew, we'll need the information. So the referee records the home team and visiting team score, the home team and visiting team timeouts remaining, and the coin toss choices. The umpire records the team in possession, the goal defended, and the location of the ball between the hash marks when play was suspended. The head linesman talks with the visiting team and notes any visiting team sideline warnings, the down, the distance to the line to gain, and the yard line of the clip at the time of suspension. Conversely, the line judge notes any home team sideline warnings, the game clock time and period, the time of the lightning and thunder that last occurred. Finally, the back judge records any players who'd been removed from the game due to concussion-like symptoms, any disqualifications, any UNS conduct penalties against non-uniform team personnel. If a game that has been suspended is rescheduled to be completed at a later time, and the crew will not be working the resumed contest, the referee is required to prepare a report including all of the information recorded above and provide it to game management. Of course, we hope to avoid any such lightning delays or weather delays that cause a second date this season or in the future as well. If you do have to deal with it, that's the requirements there. That's the procedures to follow. Let's move on. Michael, let's talk about free kicks.
Absolutely. So we'll start with everything that starts the game, and that's a kickoff. So your referee is going to be on the goal line, halfway between the center of the field and the hash mark on the headline judge's side of the field, and that's for some of our spacing issues that we have with 5-man. We do have some gaps. We're going to kind of talk through this here briefly. The referee should have a beanbag in hand just in case you have a momentum. He's also going to count the players and signal to the rest of the crew. We're going to check positions of all the other crewmates to make sure everybody's in place. The most important thing here is we want to wait for all of our other crew members to be set and ready to officiate the play. Once the R declares the ball ready for play and sounds the whistle, make sure that K has at least 4 players on either side of the kicker. If not, this is a dead ball foul. We're going to have a penalty down, have a free kick infraction, and we will back things up 5 yards and we will try it again. That's really a foul you want to try to prevent from happening, and we'll talk a little bit here with the back judge later on, but that's something the back judge can help with when they're lining everybody up to make sure that the appropriate number of players are on the right field. I don't know, Ryan, have you ever seen anybody try to do anything funky on free kick formations? You're closer than I am.
I don't know if I've ever experienced it in a game. I think I was watching a college game the other night, and I can't recall which one it was, but I think I saw it happen on an onside kick. But I don't know if I've ever had that come up in one of mine.
Yeah, it's just something we can be looking out for and hopefully prevent.
Yeah, like you said, that's an area of preventive officiating. So we can be proactive there, and not to show favoritism or to do anything there. It's something that we can work with them to avoid.
Once referee blows it in ready for play, he's also going to have to assume responsibility for the play clock, so have eyes on that too. And then once the ball is kicked, be ready to start the clock and give a good wind signal, other than, of course, first touching by K. And then you're going to pick up that runner and kind of tail them along the play, and then either give them off to the umpire or the headline judge, which we'll talk about later. If we have a deeper kick, some of these kids today have a pretty good leg. Be ready to rule on a momentum exception that might occur, or be ready for a touchback that might possibly happen. And then also know that we got both pylons in play too. So make sure you're moving down the goal line, getting in a good position there to see if the kick was inbounds or touchback rather, or if it was out of bounds. And if the kick is threatening that pylon, just make sure you've got your flag in hand if necessary. Same goes for when you're going to the other side, to the umpire side as well. You'll have to get in the right angle there to hand that runner off to the umpire and move them up the sideline. So talking about the umpire, Ryan, what's the umpire do on that side?
Yeah, so according to the manual, the umpire's initial starting position is on the line judge's sideline at the 20-yard line. That umpire can move around depending on, the leg of the kicker, right? They can go, according to the manual, as deep as the 10-yard line if K's kicker threatens the goal line. The umpire should check their sideline to make sure team personnel are back in the team box and the restricted area is clear. And this makes sense because we want the umpire to be able to move up the sideline. The umpire counts the R players and signals the count to the rest of the crew and signals that they're ready with an upraised arm. They should hold that signal just like everyone else until the referee signals that the ball is ready for play. If the kick threatens the umpire's pylon, the umpire needs to move towards the goal line quickly and coordinate coverage with the referee. Now, if the umpire can get to that pylon before the ball gets there, they need to assume a position on the pylon to rule. Before doing anything, though, the umpire needs to make eye contact with the referee, who will be moving along the goal line towards them. If the umpire has the kick definitely out of bounds on their sideline before it gets to the pylon, untouched by R, the umpire needs to throw their flag for a kick out of bounds. It's a spot foul, so we need to make sure that flag is accurate. If they're not 100% sure that the kick was out of bounds before it crossed the goal line, don't make any call, but continue toward the pylon while making eye contact with R. If R hasn't signaled a touchback yet, that means that he's unsure too. At that point, think back to 2 weeks ago when we talked about when in doubt axioms. And the when in doubt axiom here dictates that it's a touchback when in doubt between a kick out of bounds or a touchback. Correct. That touchback would be signaled by the referee. Now, if the umpire sees a kick that's either out of bounds or that crosses the goal line before going out of bounds, and we know definitively that we've got one or the other, they'll give that signal above the head to kill the clock twice and blow the whistle to get the action stopped. On a kick to the umpire side of the field, they'll give the wind signal to start the game clock if the kick is touched inbounds. If there's anything other than first touching by K, the umpire will pick up the runner and follow him along the sideline until releasing them to the line judge at around the or 35-yard line. If the runner's down before then the umpire sounds their whistle, holds the forward progress spot, and kills the clock. If the kick is down in the middle, or it's more on the headline judge's side of the field, the umpire has to observe the action around the runner, moving along the sideline, and clean up any action behind the play. Now, the umpire should stay off the field for the entire play. The umpire is responsible for their sideline, needs to stay on that sideline and off of the field. Michael, as a headline judge, what are you doing on free kicks?
I think these are tougher plays to work because we don't have the ability to see a lot of them during the off season. So a lot of times we're lining up week one, and I know we're getting ready for week 4 here, but you're still nervous because you just don't see a lot of them. And I think for the line judge, the headline judge, and the umpire especially, we are not in positions we're used to, right? The referee is used to trailing the play. The back judge is used to being out in front of the play. But I know guys like you and me, or officials like you and me rather, we're usually trailing the play. And if we've got a deeper kick, we've got to let that ball kind of come past us, which is very funny and just very odd. And then you mentioned with the umpire to stay off the field. And I know there's probably a lot of umpires out there. That's a very unnatural feeling to be on the sideline as opposed to in the action. So it can be hard to do.
For umpires who work both college and high school, obviously the college or the 7-man mechanic, they're coming into the field free kicks. So, so I think there probably is a bit of a challenge there. I mean, obviously the starting position is going to be different between the two. but there's sort of an inkling to sort of want to get out onto the field on those kicks.
I noticed sometimes the college umpires too, they're anxious to get in the middle of the field, and they usually get out there pretty quick because they're ready to get in there rough and tumble and the guys. So I'm sure it is totally different on the high school level too. Now this is I'll kind of segue here to what the head line judge is doing. If you get a chance during pregame and they happen to be kicking off or anything like that, get an idea of the leg of the kicker. Are they kicking it deeper? Are they kicking it shorter? Some of the better kickers obviously have that ability to vary long and deep kick, long kicks, deep kicks, or short kicks, or pooch kicks. Some maybe not so much. Some kickers are just straightforward. I'm gonna kick it as far as I can, but just know what they like to do and what those tendencies might be, and we can adjust like we talked about accordingly. So as the H, I'm going to line up on the 30 initially, clearing the sideline, making sure everybody's out of the way. The manual talks about counting our players. There's enough time. I usually count both just to make sure. It never hurts to have a backup there. So if you're ready to do that, you can count both if you've got the time. Then you're going to signal to your referee that you're ready to go. If the kick comes to your side, be prepared to wind the clock and then begin to move with the runner. If the kick goes out of bounds on your side, you're going to have a flag. Now, we talked a little bit about this with R and U. If it's that deep kind of pylon kick, we still want that spot foul, but it's likely the coach is going to take that ball further up. If it's kicked off at the 40, we'll be putting it in play at the 35. But on our sideline, that ball may be going out of bounds at the 30, 35, or the 40. So we've got to get that spot because that's where we're going to enforce it from. So when you're on that sideline, make sure you're looking at the action going on in front of you. I talked a little bit about this earlier. It's a little difficult to kind of be in front of the runner. So make sure that you're observing whatever blocks you have in front of you. And then as the referee releases the runner to you, we talked about the R35, for the umpire to the line judge. Those are all just approximations. Again, it depends upon where the ball's kicked and where that runner takes the play. But be ready to take that runner over. And then, of course, like any other play, any other scrimmage play, if that action goes away from you, just be prepared to clean up. Maybe you got backside players who are tussling a little bit, get in there and break the action up. So that's what I'm doing on my sideline. Ryan, what are you doing on your sideline?
Yeah, but before I get into that, you made a good point of watching the kickers in pregame warmups. I think we've discussed it on here before. So Michael and I, part of our pregame during the week, I try to get a scouting report for my team. He does it for the team on his sideline. One of the things that we'll try to do if we can, whether it's stats or watching film, is to get some indication of, what we can expect on kickoffs and punts. And so to some extent, if you can figure that out in advance, that's helpful as well. But, like Michael said, if you're watching it pregame, you can get some sort of sense of that too. The line judge, though, starts in the middle of the field at the 50-yard line in front of R. What I tell them is, this is your line. Don't cross it until the ball's been kicked. I will tell them that if they're out there 10 times during the game, 2 times, it'll be the exact same speech every time. And we're warning them there. Now, my count here is that I'm responsible for counting the kicking team. So I'll do that once I get back to the sideline. But when I'm standing in front of R, I usually count them as well, just because other than telling them that's their line, I don't have anything else to do. So I'll typically count them, punch to the referee. And then once I get back to the sideline, I'll get my K count in, punch there, and get going there. But after we've advised R not to cross the line till the ball's been kicked, I'll go back to the sideline at midfield with a beanbag in my hand. We'll make sure that the sideline is clear, and that's when I'll count the K players and signal that count to the crew. As with everyone else, I'll give an upraised arm until the referee signals that the ball's ready for play. Once we're ready for the kick, I have to be alert for encroachment by R or a pop-up kick by K. If either of those happens, I kill it immediately, throw the flag and shut the play down, and then signal that appropriately to the referee and point to the offending team. Now, the line judge needs to be alert for first touching by K and mark the yard line of first touching with that beanbag in their hand. We also watch the initial blocks on the K players on the line judge's side of the field as they cover the kick. The line judge moves slowly down their sideline on a deep kick, but it shouldn't go any further than the R35. Pay attention to the return, and if it looks like it's going to be a long one, start giving some ground on the sideline. As line judge, you're responsible for your sideline all the way to K's goal line. The runner is downed in our area, sound the whistle, hold the forward progress spot, and kill the clock. If it's to the other side of the field, look at blocks and action away from the ball. Now that's line judge. What the back judge does, the back judge takes charge of the ball to be kicked, They'll administer a penalty, giving the final signal if there's a penalty that carries over that we need to administer there, or if there's an encroachment or something on the kick itself. The back judge has an initial position in the middle of the field at K's free kick line and tells K's players not to cross their line until the ball's kicked. They'll give the ball to the kicker, point out the referee, and tell the kicker not to kick until R has given the signal of the ready for play. If the kicker's not ready, then the back judge should place the ball on the ground. Once that's done, back judge moves to the headline judge's sideline at the free kick line with a beanbag in hand. They'll temporarily go back to the K35 to check that there's not a K player other than the kicker more than 5 yards behind the spot of the kick, and then they'll move back up to the K40 on the free kick line. The back judge checks their sideline to make sure that team personnel are in the team box and that the restricted area is clear. They'll also count the K players and give that count to the crew and give the upraised arm to the referee for the ready for play. If the ball falls off, kill it immediately, go into the field, and remind the kicker not to kick until signaled by R. The back judge needs to be alert for encroachment or a pop-up kick by K. As with the line judge, if you see either, kill the play, throw the flag, and give the appropriate signal to R. Back judge needs to be alert for first touching as well and mark the yard line of first touching with their beanbag. They'll watch the initial blocks on the K players on their side of the field as they cover the kick. Back judge also needs to be looking for action against the kicker and the holder if there is one, and cover the kicker and the holder to the R45. Once the ball's downfield, the back judge moves into the center of the field. They'll move downfield cautiously, no more than 10 to 15 yards, remaining alert for the possibility of a long return. And if there is that long return, they'll have responsibility for the runner from a position ahead of the runner, not trailing. It's the back judge who's responsible for the goal line there. On a short return, the back judge should look for the legality of blocks and any action away from the ball.
Yeah, those are all great points, Ryan. And I think the L and the B, every kickoff, you're probably a little anxious standing up because you just never know what's going to happen, whether it's high school or college there. But just always be ready for that onside kick, especially when we're talking about having a beanbag in hand and who's touching the ball. You could have something as simple as just a miss kick and they
right.
just shank it. I know on my sideline, sometimes in games, I will have a coach, assistant coach. I can't remember the game, but about a year or so ago, every kickoff he'd say, "We're kicking it deep left, we're kicking it deep right, onside kick." And I'm like, "Don't tell me that," because I don't want to give it away. Some crews might have a signal of, they tap their leg or their knee to indicate an onside kick. I personally don't really like that. I know in 5-man we have some gaps when it comes to kickoff. The manual kind of discourages us from doing that just because you never want to give away information that might possibly give an advantage or a disadvantage to a team. I have a terrible poker face anyway, so I never want to do that.
Yeah, I think my first year I got surprised the first time I saw an onside kick. But after that, I've even before the manual came out, I started putting my beanbag in my hand every kick. And I go up there assuming that every kick is going to be an onside kick. Obviously, it's a very small percentage that is. But if I'm assuming an onside kick and they kick it away, then, no harm done. The beanbag goes back on my belt or my pocket, and I just move down and cover the kick. I have heard, I had a game once where I'm on my sideline at the 50, and I heard the special teams coach telling his players, onside kick left, onside kick left. Well, if I signal to you guys at that point to move up, then it's going to be pretty obvious what's going on, right? So I'm not going to announce it or give a signal. I think that puts the team at a disadvantage if I'm giving away what their planned play is there. So obviously I was quite alert for the onside kick on that one. I don't often have a play call that's onside kick left, but I think it's entirely inappropriate for me. And this is outside the manual, but I think it's inappropriate if obviously we know situational onside kicks, right? A minute left and it's a 4-point game.
Sure.
And the trailing team's kicking. Well, that's those ones where we all move up, right? But if they're doing a surprise one midway through the second quarter of a game that's either close or not all that close, if suddenly we're all rushing up, I think that's a little bit too much for us to do, and it's unfair.
Yeah, I agree. Like you said, in a situation where we're less than a score, maybe 2 scores perhaps, and we get together after the try and we look at the score and it's 31-28, and the referee may make the decision to say, "Hey, let's prepare for the onside kick." Everybody in the building probably knows it's coming, so at that point we can kind of move to our onside kick mechanics. The referee in that case, the manual talks about being at the 10-yard line, but the important thing here is make sure you're behind that deepest receiver. If they're at the 20, okay, the 10 might be a good spot. Maybe they're staying all the way back in their usual position just in case. You want to make sure you cover that because the goal line could still become a factor. All right, so the umpire is going to take an initial position on the home side on R's free kick line. And I realize, too, now as we've been saying this, we're saying R for referee and R for return team, so it can get kind of confusing. So just bear with us here on that one.
Yeah, I'll try to be more mindful of saying referee instead of R because
I should.
That's
too.
a good point you make.
So Ryan's going to get booted from his spot traditionally there because the umpire is going to take it over there. In this case, we're going to have a beanbag in hand, and we're going to be looking for first touching by K. Be alert if the ball's not crossed R's free kick line and been grounded or has been touched by the return team, because those are things that have to be met in order for K to legally recover the ball here. That beanbag, however, we're only going to use that to mark the spot of first touching by K. We're not going to be worried about anything else in this situation. This is a play that should be relatively quick. Now, that's not to say it is football. Weird things can happen, but that's the primary use of the beanbag. Now, if R touched the kick before it went 10 yards and it was grounded, at that point, it's permissible for the covering official to give the touch signal, and that same signal often is used to indicate that a kick or a pass has been tipped. So that kind of over the hand, almost kind of like you're giving yourself a high five. And at the same time, if the ball kind of goes away from you, make sure you're looking at blocks, making sure everything's legal there. So, Ryan, now that you've been taken out of your traditional role, and the H2 gets moved up, talk us through what they're going with.
Yeah, it's a bit uncomfortable for me to talk about what the H is supposed to do with you on here, but I'll do my best here. When we move up, obviously it involves me going to the kicking line, and you and the umpire come up to the receiving line, the 50. So you're going to move up to R's free kick line, the receiving line, the 50. You'll be outside the visitor sideline just like you normally are with a beanbag in hand. You'll be looking for first touching by K, or a kick that's not crossed R's free kick line and has been grounded, or touching by R before those requirements are met. Now, the beanbag is only used to mark a spot of first touching by K. It shouldn't be used to mark a spot where R touched the kick before it went 10 yards and was grounded. If R touched the kick before it went 10 yards and was grounded, it's permissible for the covering official to give the informal touch signal, that same signal we give if a kick or a pass in flight has been tipped, sort of that one hand straight up and the other swiping off of it, that tip signal. We'll need for the H to be mindful of restrictions on contact by the kicking team when the kick is still in the neutral zone. And the H also looks for the legality of blocks in action away from the ball if the kick goes to the other side of the field. The line judge takes initial position, as I said a moment ago, on their normal sideline, the home team sideline in 99+% of cases, on K's free kick line. So instead of starting on the 50, you're starting back at the 40. L will be alert for first touching by the kicking team, or a kick that's not crossed R's free kick line and has been grounded, or touching by R before those requirements are met. L, as I just said for H, uses the beanbag only to mark a spot of first touching by K. If R touched it before it went 10 yards and was grounded, then L can also give that tip signal that we just discussed. L needs to be mindful of restrictions on contact by K when the kick is still in the neutral zone. And as with H, they're looking at the legality of blocks in action away from the ball if the kick goes to the other side of the field. Back judge, normal position for them. Home team side, K's free kick line, beanbag in hand. As with everybody else, they're only marking a spot of first touching by K with that beanbag. They can give the tip signal. They also have to be mindful of restrictions on contact by K when the kick's still in the neutral zone. Now, all officials are looking at the legality of blocks in action away from the ball if the kick goes to the other side of the field from them. Now, all officials here, if we're all moving up, we've got the four officials, H, L, U, and B, need to be especially alert for encroachment violations here. Sometimes we'll give a little leeway on a normal kickoff or normal free kick. But here with an onside kick, it's that sort of famous description. It's a pane of glass, right? If the kicking team, if there's a guy whose helmet is leaning over the line and it would break that pane of glass, it's a foul. Same thing with R leaving early there.
Right.
Now,
this is a high tense situation. Everybody's looking to get that advantage that they can, like we talked about in a specific scenario, it might be 3, 4, 5 points. And that's where we need to come in and make sure nobody's getting a head start, because this is going to be a big time momentum play. And so
right.
we all have to be ready.
Right. Everything has to be perfect there. Michael, why don't you talk about free kicks following safeties in an area where I know that you have expertise that I don't, a free kick following a fair catch?
Oh yeah. Okay. That was a fun game. Yeah. I'll start with the safety. So when we have a safety, the ball's going to be put in at the 20-yard line, the case 20-yard line, I guess I should say. Your normal positions and mechanics are all the same as it would be for a traditional free kick. You may, depending upon the kicker's leg, kind of adjust things. The H and U might come up a little bit. Obviously, your B and your L are going to be on their same restraining lines. B will be on K's restraining line, and L will be on R's restraining line. If your kicker has a powerhouse of a foot, your referee may want to stay back on the goal line, or he may want to come up perhaps maybe 10 or 15 yards. 15 might be pushing it, so just depending upon the leg of that kicker. Unlike a kickoff, though, a free kick after safety could be a punt. So it's important to remember that even though K is punting, the rules of free kicks still apply. So it's not a traditional punt where the receiving team could come in and make a block. They still have that 10-yard neutral zone that we have to be aware of. Now, like Ryan alluded to earlier, I have luckily been part of a game where we had a free kick following a fair catch, and it was a unique experience and a really fun experience. I think if I recall, the home team, let's say, was punting from I think like their own 2. And I can hear the visiting team coach screaming out, fair catch, fair catch, fair catch. And he made a fair catch at the 40, but he had just green grass and daylight in front of him, and everybody was puzzled. We were nearing the end of the half, and so the coach was wisely opting to use a free kick after that fair catch, and it was kind of a neat experience. So it is pretty rare. It is a field goal attempt that will result in some points, but it's still a free kick. They can't rush it. It's not a traditional scrimmage kick. So your referee is going to be on the end line underneath one of the uprights, and the umpire is going to be on the end line as well underneath the other upright. So 2 positions that they're normally not finding themselves in, the referee and the umpire, but they're back there and they're looking for, obviously, are we going through the uprights? Are we good? Or are we no good? The umpire in this case is a quasi back judge, and they're going to look at the crossbar and make sure everything is clean and tidy there. The headline judge uses the normal kickoff mechanics, just kind of position yourself for the length of the kick, I could say. So in the case of the play that I had, we were kicking from the 40. I lined up on the 20 just to kind of split the difference between the goal line and the free kick line there. If it's further back, maybe K is kicking from their own 40 or their 50, you may just want to split that difference again, and you may end up on the 30 like you normally would. The mechanics manual talks about using the chain equipment to set the line to gain. That way you can help define the neutral zone, and that'll help line everybody up, because it is a rare play that not everybody sees. So there's going to be some confusion on what players can and can't do. And that's where your back judge and your line judge have to get in there and just communicate. It's a free kick. We're lining up. We're counting 11, and then we're going to put the ball in play. Ryan, did I leave anything out?
No, I think you've covered it all. And I was going to talk about what the line judge and the back judge are doing. But as you said, for us, it's a normal play. We have to watch the receiving line, watch the kicking line, just like we would otherwise. We can also give each other a signal to remind each other that the ball will remain alive unless we have a reason that it's killed, right? Goes into the end zone, hits the ground, or whatever other reason that the play might be killed.
Well, and that's a good point, because even though my specific example, they were attempting to score points, right, and they were close enough to do so, the headline judge there in this case, or at least in my case, I was the one who had the goal line. I had to float down there and make sure that the ball broke the goal line. In this case, it did. It unfortunately went wide right, so hopefully it doesn't bring up any bad memories for fans. But it was wide right. But since it is a free kick, it is returnable. If it were to fall short, the return team has an opportunity to field the ball and take it back the other way if they want to.
Right. Yeah. I think the point here is that it's an unusual play, but because of that, it's something that you need to discuss, at least some point during the season. Early in the season, obviously, it's an off-season type of thing that I think would be beneficial. It could be worth just a very quick part. We've talked about pregame things, talking about measurements every week. This is probably one to add there, right? It's not going to take a ton of time. Make sure everybody's position knows their positions, what they're doing. And just a reminder, it's a free kick. The opponent puts a returner back there and that kick falls short. We go back to our normal free kick mechanics. And, if you think through the positioning, we're set up for a free kick, right? The U is going to be further back than they would normally be. But otherwise, the referee and the umpire are back. The head linesman is the next person. and then L and D are in their normal positions. So kicks away, it's return, play ball, right?
Right.
So from there, let's move on to scrimmage kicks. We discussed free kicks. We'll go to scrimmage kicks and talk about the mechanics here. Usually, what we'll probably have most often in high school would be punts, but we'll discuss field goals as well. With punts, the referee, after declaring the ball ready for play, would assume an initial position 3 to 5 yards outside of the tight end and 2 to 3 yards behind the punter on the side of his kicking leg. This is a reason that it's a good idea for the referee to ask the coaches in the pregame meeting, in addition to which arm is your quarterback, which foot is your kicker, right? Is your punter a lefty or righty?
Right.
It's also worth asking, are they a rugby style punter, right? So that they can know that that punter might be coming right at them and they better be on their horse moving out of the way, right? But the referee wants to make sure that they can see the ball and all the backs. They'll count the K players and signal the count, signal to the crew that the kicking team is in a scrimmage kick formation, which lets us know to look for numbering exceptions and action against the snapper. Like I said, the referee needs to make sure that they can see the snap clearly. When the snap occurs, they'll look through the kicker and the protectors to the far tackle on the end, look at those blocks, and then come back to the shield, the personal protectors, however we want to describe them, and be ready to rule if there was a player that was blocked into the kicker, right? Because the referee is going to be responsible for running into or roughing the kicker there.
Right. They're all alone on this one.
Right. So their last focus is on action against the kicker, and they'll need to stay with that kicker until he's no longer threatened. Once it's kicked, if it's safe to divert their attention away from the kicker, the referee can look at the flight of the ball. If it's apparent it's not going to go out of bounds, then they're no longer going to be responsible for the ball. If it is going to go out of bounds, they're going to have to help the wing on that sideline to chop it in if it goes out of bounds in flight. If there's a bad snap, a block kick, a mishandled snap, or some other mishap, the referee will need to be prepared to move in the appropriate direction. The referee here is responsible for the kicking team's goal line. Once it's kicked, the referee should yell out balls away or kicks away or something along those lines so that the receivers know to stop rushing the kicker. Once the kick crosses the neutral zone, the referee should observe the line play and slowly move downfield. Remember, move slowly because you're responsible for the goal line there. The referee should watch for fouls and be prepared for a long run back. If the kick goes out of bounds in flight, as you said, go to the spot of the kick and line up the covering official. Usually we'll have L or H. I suppose you could have B in some circumstances, with an outstretched arm. And then as that official on the sideline comes toward them, chop down to let them know where the ball should be put in play. If there's no foul, the referee can signal the line to gain equipment to move downfield to H and confirm that the line to gain indicator is properly set before signaling the ball ready for play. That's the referee. That's a whole lot going on there on a scrimmage kick. Michael, what's the umpire doing?
The umpire has a couple different things going on here. They're going to move back to about 10 yards deep. They're going to be on the line judge's side, and Ryan's going to talk a little later that line judge is going to leave early, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Count the players on K like you normally would, so you're always still counting the offense and give that signal to your crew. Make sure you're talking to the defense and saying, hey, that the snapper's got protection, stay off him, don't hit the snapper, those kind of things. Again, these are very high-risk plays sometimes, especially when you're talking with the punter. He's got a leg in the air, or a snapper's got his head down, so we've got to protect the players in these cases too. Look for any numbering exceptions you might have. Nowadays, a lot of snappers are wearing a 41 or a 87, or somebody who's quick, or maybe a linebacker, somebody who can get down the field. So that might come into play as well. It's something you can pregame if you get a chance to look at the formations too, and you have a chance to just jot those down. Now, most teams use the same lineup for most of their punts. So after that first punt, just make some mental notes of what you can expect. It's rare, but it's possible they could change it. But if for whatever reason you had a question about a formation, you can address it later if you need to, but they should be all in the same there and just get you in that routine for that particular game. Make sure you're watching the guard and the snapper, looking for false starts or snap infractions, just like you would have on any other play and any illegal action that's against the snapper. Once the snap has happened and we've got the kick, if you see that the kick is going to go out of bounds in flight, just try to help the referee to pick up the ball if at all possible. Try to help the referee if the kick is short or if it is blocked. And then you can also help out if the ball's crossed the neutral zone. The head line judge is going to be responsible for that primarily, but you can help out too. After the kick has cleared and kind of that first wave clears turn towards the line judge's side because that's going to be the side that's kind of vacated, and try to pick up any blocks going there. Move toward the return area, but again, just like the referee, move slowly and pick up action that's kind of away from the ball, looking for any fouls that might happen. And then if the ball goes out of bounds, help to get a new ball in play and be ready to go. That's the umpire. So now the AH, what I'm doing on a Friday night too, taking the same position as I normally would on line of scrimmage, all the pre-snap responsibilities. And if you tuned in last week, we had our pre-snap routine that we were talking about on scrimmage plays. We didn't get to punts, but we'll probably save that for a later episode. So the AH is going to hold the line of scrimmage at the snap. You're looking at the initial contact on that gunner in front of you, making sure they get off clean or able to get away clean. There's nothing going on there. Once the ball has crossed the neutral zone, again, moving slowly is kind of the name of the game here, because you don't want to be too quick and then have to backpedal a bunch to cover a long return. Try to pick up the action on your side. You're going to have the back judge on your side as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that later to help with some of those initial blocks. But I find as a line of scrimmage person, you can help with the second wave of blocks coming downfield. Now, if the ball does go out of bounds on your side in flight, we're going to stop the clock, move a little further downfield. If you're able to get the spot, you can get the spot. If it's not too high, if it's 30 feet in the air and you need some help, turn back around, face the referee, start walking to the sideline. And like Ryan said, the referee will chop you in and you can get your spot there. And then from there, we'll get a new ball. If the kick rolls out of bounds on your side, you should be able to pick that up. If it's, rolling or bounces once, hustle down to that spot, make sure the action is kind of stopped, get the spot, get the new ball, and we'll move in there. In some cases, if the game, dictates it because of time, score, or just down a distance, you could have a fake. So at that point, it's going to be up to you to help assist the referee in any sort of fake or scramble or pass or run that might be going on. Now, you also need to take note if the kick was touched beyond the neutral zone, and you also need to take note too if the kick was recovered behind the neutral zone, because if it was, K can have the opportunity to advance that. So with the L kind of bailing, and Ryan will get on that here in a minute, the line of scrimmage kind of becomes yours to own throughout that down. But again, moving slow is the key. Don't be in a hurry to get off that line of scrimmage. So Ryan, walk us through what you're going through on a punt.
Yeah, obviously it's like any other play. We're starting on the line of scrimmage on our normal side. This is one though where I always want my sideline clear. I'm always giving the, get behind the white or back up, whatever it
Absolutely.
is, depending on how the sideline is set up. But before a punt, I am certainly looking down and I'm yelling behind the white, because I'm coming and I'm not looking at what's in front of me when I'm moving there. According to the mechanics manual, L at the snap releases and sprints down the sideline, watching blocks on your side of the field. I have had enough bad snaps and other mishaps that I kind of wait. Once I see that the punter has received the snap and it's not going over their head, that's when I take off. I'll start.
You're looking for a clean snap, right? Because
especially
down to the goal line or something, right?
Yeah, the mechanics manual just says at the snap, so you could read that to say as soon as the snapper starts that snap, take off, and maybe that's what's intended. I'm just saying what I do, right? I've had games with that punt that goes 20 yards over the punter's head, and I need to get back to help, the referee or whomever else box it in. So I just want to make sure that I see the punter with the ball in their hand. I never will see the kick, right? As soon as I see that snap is received, whether it bounces to him, gets to him in his hands, if that punter has that snap cleanly in their hands at some point, that's when I take off. Now, the exception here, of course, when the kicker is standing in their end zone, right? So we've got that play, the offensive team is backed up, they send in the punter, the kicker is standing in his own end zone. There, the line judge needs to hold the line of scrimmage until the kick crosses the neutral zone. And that's when you proceed downfield to cover the kick. The priority there is that we have to make sure that the goal line is well covered, right? Because if the punter's in his end zone, or the referee is going to have the end line, and then H&L is always going to have the goal line, right? So we want to make sure in those instances that the kick gets off cleanly. So that's the one sort of circumstance where I will actually see the kick be made and then watch it cross the neutral zone.
Yeah, we've got the two most important lines there happening on the same play.
Right.
And on a kick play, like I alluded to earlier, we don't see a lot of kick plays. So I agree with you. Holding in that situation is great, because I don't want to have to make a judgment call, 53 yards away on whether or not the ball was across the goal line. So I think it's important to stay.
Right. But here, what we're looking for is, once we take off and we're sprinting downfield, obviously if the ball's to our side, we're going to pick up, something. If it bounces out of bounds, if we're going to have to pick up the runner. But if the kick is to the other side of the field, it's to the visiting side, to side of the line judge. I'm going to look for players in front of the return man for blocks or, any other fair catch signals or the sort that might be given, right? If the kick comes to my side, I'll watch the return specialist for signals for a fair catch, see whether or not he makes the catch, and look at any action on him. If the receiver, any player on the receiving team signals for a fair catch and there's not a catch made, the line judge is responsible for knowing whether the player that signaled illegally blocked during the play. The line judge picks up a return to their side, and we've already covered this some, right? But a ball goes out of bounds and flight to our sideline. We kill the play, move further down than the spot where it crossed, look at the R, put our arm up, and then walk towards the referee. Sorry, using that R, referee and receiver again. But that referee, and then once he chops us in, that's where we stop, point for the direction at that point, and then hold that spot until a new ball comes in and is placed by the umpire at the inbound spot. If it rolls or bounces out of bounds on our sideline, kill the whistle, and then get to the spot out of bounds and continue to observe the action there. There's a short kick that comes into our side zone as well. We'll beanbag the end of the kick if it ends in the field of play. If we have first touching, and one of the things that the manual discusses as well is the back judge and the line judge having a differently colored beanbag, right? So I wear a blue beanbag on my belt, but I've got a white in my pocket, and I use that white beanbag for free kicks, the onside kicks that we talked about, or for punts here, so that I can mark first touching down the field. So that's what I'm doing there. Michael, what's the back judge doing?
The back judge in this case is going to take a position 10 yards, 12 yards wider than the deepest receiver, 2 to 3 yards behind, and we're going to be on the chain side of the H side in this case to help out with that, because that's why the line judge with Ryan releasing down there to help cover that side. And again, we do have gaps in 5-man, so the back judge is coming over to my side. There's 2 deep receivers in this case. Go as far to the H side as you can, but still make sure you can see both receivers kind of in your field of view. Like Ryan alluded to, we're going to have a different beanbag for first touching, or also in this case, you got to signal the end of the kick. So make sure you've got your beanbag ready to go. And your goal is, as soon as the receiver moves, to maintain kind of that same cushion, you're working behind the play. If the deepest receiver is at the 15-yard line, go ahead and start on the goal line then, because that's our most important line in this case. And we've got to make sure if the goal line is going to be threatened, we're in a position to cover that. Always remind, and I think Daniel, our back judge, is very good about this. Always remind the returner to give a good, valid, and legal fair catch signal. That can't be said enough. And again, in pregame, if you're able to see those returners, you can talk to them about shielding their eyes if there's the sun or anything like that, but make sure that fair catch signal is distinct. Back to our axioms, if there's ever any doubt, it's a fair catch signal. We've got to protect that player. He's looking, up in the air and has 11 other bodies running at him. He's got to be protected. So just like on any scrimmage play, you're counting the defense or return team in this case. If the kick's short, then the wing official is going to take responsibility for the ball, and you're going to kind of come up and clean up behind that action. We talked about longer kicks going out of bounds, very similar. Get the spot out of bounds, face your referee, move up, and the referee will chop you in. If that's to the H sideline, and Ryan alluded to on the L sideline, the line judge will have that spot. Anything down the middle is yours, or anything going into the H side will also be yours. And at some point, you will hand that runner off to the headline judge there to kind of take over. If the ball's muffed, be ready to rule on possession and come up confident and make your ruling. Also look out for any sort of handoff or reverse or any sort of fake. If we do have K touching the ball first, grab that beanbag, and this is where the contrasting beanbags come in play. Grab that beanbag, mark it, and then we have first touching there, and then continue to officiate the play if necessary from there. If K is the first to touch a kick that is motionless beyond the neutral zone, sound the whistle. We're going to kill it right there. Mark the spot at the end of the kick, because they have downed the punt, as we talk a lot about. I just used my famous air quotes there, so I hope everybody can see that. If there is a fair catch, thank you for laughing at that. If there is a fair catch, we're going to sound the whistle. We're going to kill the clock. Again, we're protecting that returner as much as we can. Go ahead and mark that spot with a beanbag just in case. I know that with fair catches, we can be anxious sometimes to protect the returner, like I said, but make sure the catch is completed. Just because he waves it, he could still muff it, so be prepared for that too. And from there, I think Ryan's going to talk a little bit about what's going on after we make a fair catch, right?
Sure. And the manual, in my opinion, it puts a lot on the back judge with the colors of the beanbags there, right? As Michael discussed, if K has a first touching while the kick is still moving, that's where you're supposed to use your regular beanbag, not the contrasting color. If K touches a ball that's motionless, that's where you use a contrasting color beanbag. Or if there's a fair catch, that's where you use the contrasting color beanbag. So if you can process all of that while all the plays going on, which color to pull out, then you're doing awfully well. But if there's a fair catch signal that's given and the catch is not made, the back judge stays with the ball. The line judge picks up action on the signaler/receiver. If the goal line is threatened by a kick, the back judge needs to be prepared to rule quickly and decisively, either giving us touchback signal twice from a position on the goal line, or if we might have momentum that's involved there, they'll use the contrasting color beanbag to mark the spot of the catch or recovery, which may subsequently be used as the momentum spot. If there's a ruling that momentum took the player into the end zone, the back judge will give an out thrust arm toward the end zone as a signal of that. The back judge also, as Michael said, if there's a long kick, they'll move with the runner who catches the kick and advances, cleaning up behind the runner as that runner moves away from the back judge. So that's an overview of punts. We've talked about kickoffs, talked about weather, and I think that's a lot of information for this week. So we'd like to thank you once again for joining us for another episode of Learn Your Stripes. We'll be back next week with a guest, but we want to try something different. Our topics, which we would normally give at the end of each episode, for next week's episode are undecided. We'd like your input. So if there's a topic or more than one, multiple topics that you would like for us to discuss, please email that to us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. That's learnyourstripes@gmail.com. We'll do this as a mailbag episode. We'll cover whatever topics you wish for us to discuss: rules, mechanics, experience, thought experiments. We'll try to cover it all. As usual, though, we're going to leave you with a play to consider.
All right, with 47 seconds left in the second quarter, A has the ball 2nd and 7 at the A46. Now, just prior to the snap, A22 goes in motion. After A22 goes in motion, the entire offensive line moves from a set position with hands on the knees down to a down position with a hand on the ground. A17 then throws an incomplete pass to A22. What is the foul, if any? What are the options, if any, at the high school level, the college level? What's the down distance going to be, and the game clock and play clock status?
We'll discuss that play at the start of the next episode. In the meantime, if you want to let us know what your ruling would be, or if you have any questions or feel we made a mistake, please email us at learnyourstripes@gmail.com. You can find episodes or obtain an RSS link to directly download all episodes into your podcast app of choice at learnyourstripespodcast.com. Please also follow us on Facebook at Learn Your Stripes Podcast and on Twitter at LYS_podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate us 5 stars and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your app of choice. We also have a channel in the app Discord where we'll have ongoing discussions of rules, mechanics, and play scenarios. We have separate channels there for high school and college discussions, as well as the plays of the week. We'll see you back here next week. In the meantime, keep learning your stripes.
Thank you, everyone.